This is Greg Strange at the Institute of Directors with the latest in our series of business vidcasts from the IoD. And with me is the IoD's chief economist, Graeme Leach. Graeme, we're in the middle of February. Are we in the middle of the economic crisis?
Well, we may be in the middle of the financial crisis, but I think the economic crisis is only just beginning. I would use the analogy at present of a boxing fight. In one corner, you have mild, a relatively short and shallow economic downturn. And in the other corner, you have brutal, for a deeper and or longer downturn. And these two price fighters are pummeling the heck out of each other, and either could yet win. But I think our assessment at present is that brutal is still ahead on points. And the reason for that is that if you just look at the scale of economic forces at the present time, we've got huge expansionary, but we've also got huge contractionary forces. We've got a collapse in interest rates to record lows. We've got the 25% fall in the trade-rated exchange rate. We've got the fiscal stimulus that's been introduced. And you've got a collapse in the oil price as well. We've lost nearly $100 off the oil price in the past 7 or 8 months. So in any normal circumstances, if you said there was that policy stimulus in place, we'd be thinking about Chinese growth rates, not UK trend growth rates. But we're not even talking about UK trend growth rates. We're debating whether there'll be a recession and as to how deep and how long it will be. And that's the key factor. And the reason, of course, we're doing that is because of the scale of contractionary forces. We've got a global recession. We've got the scale of the global financial crisis and the fact that we don't know whether the worst is behind us or maybe yet in front of us. And you've got all the knock-on effects from there on the real economy as well, in terms of the housing sector, in terms of rising unemployment, and in terms of a potential spike in consumer behaviour. And so you add all those things together, you stir them around in the pot, and we're still looking at a very significant recession. We're not looking at a depression. There were very significant policy mistakes made in the 1930s, which led to a depression. But we do think we are talking about a deep and a long recession.
And of course, it is a global recession. Is there anyone around who can lead us out of it? Is there anybody in the British government or the British economic machinery that can lead us out of it? Or do we have to look to the States?
Well, it is a global downturn, but if we'd had a much more responsible fiscal policy over the last decade, we would now be in a much better position to face it. What we needed was, during the upswing, was a Joseph filling the barns with grain, putting things aside for the lean years. But in fact, the government emptied the barn during the years of plenty, and now, as we go into that downturn, the potential fiscal stimulus they can give is more muted and more limited. I don't think anybody could necessarily have avoided a recession in the current circumstances, but we could have made it a much weaker and milder downturn if we put money aside during the good years to spend now.
Any bright ideas how we get out of it?
Well, I think we have to ease monetary policy even further, take short-term interest rates down. The government's going to use quantitative easing to take interest rates down at the long end as well. What we need is probably more fiscal stimulus in the short term as well, but that has to be countered by a clear plan for fiscal austerity in the long term, because there's a very real risk as well here that even when the recession stabilises, we don't really get much of a pickup. We get an L-shaped economic cycle, because unlike in previous cycles, of course, which were encouraged by falling interest rates, we've spent that gain already. Interest rates have already fallen, and you've got a real risk that in a deflationary environment, consumers will be saying, why buy today when it's going to be cheaper tomorrow? So we've faced a very difficult situation.